Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Key to Football with me, Bobby Mays. I have Liam George with me. I have Nathan O'Sullivan and I have George O'Gara Martins. It's a great podcast today. We are filling up, the news of what happened over the weekend, the massive weekend where the Premier League finished. Also, let everybody know next week we'll be doing our end of year review podcast, so where we go over our predictions, how much Liam messed up in every single category of it. And also, please do follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. You'll also find this on YouTube at The Key to Football. So please do share it with people. I'm just going to introduce the panelists. I don't know if that's what they're called. Nathan, how are you?
Very well, very well. Very happy to have lost for the first time ever. So riding on a high today.
That's absolutely shameful, and a classic Villa supporter. I'm very happy to have you on. Liam, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good.
All good. Well, I mean, at least one of us is. I'm in the worst mood ever. And George, how are you doing today?
Relieved, but still pretty excited and giddy.
Do you know what? You were the one shining light of yesterday. All of these other guys can toss off, but I was very happy for you yesterday, George. Leeds staying up was very big. It means the podcast can go on next year, which is super good. Otherwise, we'd have to be having a championship podcast, which might have been good for some of the listeners, I guess.
Everyone who actually likes football, yeah.
Look, we should also mention that next weekend, I guess the season's not technically over for some of them. We've got the championship playoff final at Wembley. It's Nottingham Forest versus Huddersfield, I believe. And I mean, that's massive for it would be great to have. Personally, I'd love to have Forest back in the league, but I'm not too sure what the boys. Anybody not want Forest back in the league? Anybody want Huddersfield back in?
Huddersfield had their moment a couple of years ago, didn't they? Yeah. I'm a big advocate of teams coming up that haven't been in the league for a good sort of 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So any sort of fresh faces, any new grounds to go to, I'm a big fan.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, you happy to have Forest back up?
Yeah, I prefer Forest. I went to Steve Cooper's first game this year, just on a limb when he first came in, and they were bottom. So since then, remarkable.
They have been unbelievable. We have quite a few Forest fans at work now, and they are, let's just say, very excited and very nervous because Forest are a very big team that probably should be in the Premier League, and it'd be great to have him back. George, anything you wanted to say on that just before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, Steve Cooper, he comes in and they're in the relegation zone, and he's only had 35 games to turn it round. I mean, that's pretty... I'm joking. He's done a good job, obviously, and yeah, Forest, yeah, definitely. I think, like Liam said, Huddersfield had their time in the sun.
You'll also find the Champions League final on this weekend on Sunday. That is Liverpool versus Real Madrid. Might try and do a pre-match of that. Might be fun. Go through maybe Champions League of a team, Champions League team of the season. We'll get some players, maybe do something fun around that. And then after that, we'll do our review podcast. But let's just go through it. Everybody, there was a massive weekend of football. I think this, in terms of Premier League seasons, in my opinion, this was the best one that I can remember in terms of everything being up for grabs that you wanted it to be up for grabs for. So as a neutral, you could decide to watch the someone who's going to win the Premier League. You could decide to watch who's going to be relegated. You could also decide who was going to get top four. I just think that every position that really, and also Europa League was still up for grabs as well. I just thought it was a great shining light of how good the Premier League is right now. Yes, maybe there's some better teams than others, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of categories of where teams are very equal with each other as well, which is very entertaining for the neutral. So I'm going to run you through it, and then we'll go for a bit of a deep dive into what actually happened over the weekend. So Manchester City did beat Aston Villa to win the Premier League title. I mean, it was, we'll go into it a bit later on as to what actually happened. Liverpool came second. And then top four was decided on the last day between Tottenham and Arsenal. And Tottenham did manage to pip Arsenal to it, comfortably winning their match. But so did Arsenal. Arsenal played pretty decent. And then the relegation battle was between Leeds and Burnley. And Leeds did the job. They won. It was up to Burnley to make sure if they won, they would have stayed in the league, and they could not beat Newcastle. So all of those people that were saying Newcastle relegated at the end of the season, I guess did Leeds a bit of a favor. So that was the roundup. Now we're going to do a little bit different here because we've got some specialists on today. We have George, the Leeds specialist, Nathan, the Villa specialist. We've got Liam, the Tottenham specialist, and the Arsenal boy. And we've got me, who's a massive City fan. So we're all going to have a 5-minute overview of what we thought our team was like. Guys, pick up in the middle if you want to challenge anything that you're saying. But I want you guys to run through how you think your team did this season. What was the best part of the season? Where do you think you really, the part next year you need to pick up for was like, say, Liverpool need to be more confident over the Christmas period for something like that. What's that part next season you really hope you change as well? So I'm going to start with Liam. Arsenal, how was it? I mean, you've got to be pretty happy at the start of a season. If I told you fifth, I think you would have taken that.
I think hindsight is a bit of pill to swallow the last couple of weeks when it's in your hand, right? And I think if you offered me fifth at the start of the season with the squad that we had, and then told me that we'd also lose Aubameyang, in January, then I probably would have still snapped your hand off. But obviously, the circumstance that has happened is made it difficult. But again, as I said, hindsight is one of those things, and it's the last couple of weeks where it was in our hands and we've let it go ourselves is one that makes it hard to swallow. But all in all, I think we were floating about in the abyss for a few years, mixing between managers, and we finally found a little bit of a footing with Arteta, and we've been able to build on that, get ourselves back into Europe, because I think
I think you've cut out there, Liam. You might have hit the mic out.
Maybe it's the referees trying to suppress you, Liam.
I'll just knock myself. I'll get onto that.
Carry on, we can hear you, Liam.
Yeah, sorry. I think with Arteta now, we've got a bit of a steadfast manager. I think hearing the Arteta outs week in, week out, I think now we've just come to learn. I think you could see this on the Emirates on the weekend, that those people that are, for some reason, getting the limelight are the idiots of the Arsenal fan base, and there are plenty of them, unfortunately. But I think in Arteta now we've got a manager that we can move forward. We had the youngest squad consistently in the league, and even to be within a shout of top four, given 3-4 games out, and it was firmly in our hands. All right, we didn't get over the line, but just to be up there and challenging for it with that squad, Nketiah leading the line. If you told me that 6 months ago, I would have been probably trying to stay out of relegation with that squad rather than nick top four. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm a little bit bitter that it's gone to Spurs in our place. That's I think has made it a bit tougher to swallow. If it was another team, I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah. More focus on Arsenal positives, and rather than seeing that we've gifted it to them, that's a bit difficult. But no, I think if we strengthen, have a good summer, come back. The only problem I kind of see with Europa next year is Thursdays, Sundays in tough history. Yeah, it doesn't really bode well for teams. You see a lot of teams tend to struggle with that, and I don't think actually there's many teams that have been playing Europa League and then managed to, in league form, actually sneak into the top four the year after. That's one of those stats that bothers me a little bit. I don't think many teams have managed it. Normally you see those sort of teams float about Europa again, or if not lower. So, it's going to be a tough one to juggle, but I guess if you ask me, would I rather be in it then out of it. Europa League, I'd say in it. So, yeah, I'll give it a firm 7 out of 10.
It's interesting that you bring up the Europa League thing, because watching West Ham this year do quite well in it, and also still do, I think, a very good job of their position at the end of the year. I think watching that will make, I don't know, I just thought that, next year, I wonder if teams will take it a bit more seriously. I don't know. This is the first time that I thought that teams like Rangers took it really seriously the whole way through.
For sure, yeah.
And it is massive.
I think a few of the teams that have been in this year have got, huge fan bases, and I think you've seen a big following on it from that respect, right? So the Rangers, you can't help but you can't ignore what's happened with Rangers, right? It's been a bit of a love story, and obviously West Ham have got a huge following in London, and me and you living around the corner from it, it's been hard to ignore that as well.
Yeah.
But did I mention we know Moisey anyway? No, I think also I was thinking about this the other day. The addition of the Europa Conference League has actually meant that the Europa League is now not the bottom feeder in essence. And even though he kind of was, and it has been for a long time, I think now the fact that there is a league below the Europa League, suddenly the Europa League seems like a bit more of an achievement, because you're not getting into the worst of the worst. You're getting into the one above that now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's given it a little bit of a stature back. And yeah, you've seen a great example, obviously, this year. I said the teams that normally play in it don't end up doing too well in their league. I think Frankfurt were 14th or 13th in their league.
Yeah.
They were closest to relegation, or not too far off relegation, actually. And they're going to be playing in the Champions League next year. So there's a lot of value in winning that competition. Frankfurt would have been playing for nothing next year in Europe, and hopefully trying to stay there, keep their heads above water again. So, yeah, again, if you ask me, would I rather be in it than out it? I definitely would rather be in it this year.
Awesome. No, great roundup there. Nathan, Villa, interesting. I think this is actually one of the more interesting takes, because Villa have had a really indifferent season where there's been a lot of highs and lows, I would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't be as optimistic as Liam's 7 for Arsenal. I'd probably put us a 3 or a 4. I mean, we're 10 points worse off than last year.
Oh, wow.
We're 3 places lower off than last year. Yes, we got rid of Grealish. Did we spend all of the money replacing him? Yes, bringing in 3 players that arguably, you'd say, haven't really lived up to expectation. Leon Bailey, 2 injury prone. Danny Ings, you'd expect more from him. And Buendia recently started to get better, but it's been a bit too little too late. We needed him to turn up in big games like Wolves, West Ham, where once you beat them, you then look to close up to them. Yeah, I think the story of our season is not too many losses. You can't lose 19 games in the league. It's half the games, and expect to finish anywhere even close to sort of 7th, 8th, 9th, which is where we should be. And there've been a lot of positive performances in there, but we still lose those games. I mean, Man City's probably summed up our season in 6 minutes. It was 70 minutes of promise and then 6 minutes of just awful, and we lose the game. And it's another game where you could probably win or draw, climb up the table, albeit too late, and you lose it. Same against Liverpool, same against other clubs at the top. I mean, our record against the top 7, we only took points off Man United this season. Everyone else did double on us in the top 7. So that's something that needs to be looked at as well. If you want to be up there, you've got to beat teams up there to claw back to them. You can't just be beating the Burnleys and the Palaces, or else you'll always finish 14th.
What do you say is your biggest your biggest issue this year, do you think, Nathan?
Our biggest issue
is it beating those top teams?
We can't break down. It's a bit of both. Against smaller teams, we can't beat a low block. Burnley came and just sat in front of us, couldn't break them down, got a point. Other teams have come and done it, like Wolves. They've sort of sat in Newcastle, didn't beat them either. And then the big teams, we're just not meant. We don't play for 90 minutes. Everyone sees us on Sky. I know Mays has said it before. Like, Villa were really good today, but we still lost. And it's always like we show 45 minutes of promise, and then the other 45 minutes we just get blown away. I don't know if you saw Tottenham about a month ago. It was 0-0 at half time, and we'd had 11 shots on target, and we lost 4-0 because we didn't turn up in the second half. So too much for one half team at the minute. If you start putting it together for 90, you might do better, but you can't afford to just ship 4.5. I remember against Arsenal as well early in the season, we were absolutely diabolical for the first half. I think it was 2-0 at half time, game over, and then we started to play a bit better, looked respectable. So
is that a striker that you need to come in, or is that a and also two-part question, striker that you need to come in? And since Steven Gerrard's come in, you play a bit of a different brand of football. Are you enjoying that, or do you much rather prefer the results?
A bit of both. I mean, I think there will be a striker. I do like Ollie Watkins, but he's not one that you want one chance to fall to. I'll say that much. He needs 2, 3, 4 chances to put one away. I've seen chances this year where he's hit the bar. Even City yesterday, I think he was through 1-on-1, puts it wide, could have killed the game. That. Yeah, he's not one you want one chance. Whereas you think Ings is probably one you do want one chance for, but he doesn't do the hard work that Watkins gets through. So I think we will bring one in. We've already signed Kamara, as we've seen, so they're not messing around at where they think they need to strengthen. I think CDM was a problem, and he's fixed it one day after the season's ended. So, what was the second question? I forgot.
About the play style that since Gerrard's come in, it's a bit of a more offensive brand of football. Are you enjoying that, or would you much rather prefer the results?
It is nicer to watch. It's a lot different to last season. I mean, last season, our best player in recent history was a left winger. So everything was down the flanks, whether it was Cash on one side, Grealish and Target on the other side. And now we play with 2 number 10s. So it's a completely different, there's no crossing really. It's all tight into play, which is nice, but ultimately it's not really, we don't have a sort of like a plan B. We sort of bring Traore on, Bailey if he's fit, and then we might go wide, but it's quite predictable and better teams can defend against it really. So a bit of both. It's nice to watch, but
yeah, I feel like that's kind of masked. I was really surprised, along with Bob, what Bob said at the beginning as well, really surprised that you're 10 points off this year than you were last year.
Yeah.
Because you've almost masked that with, I think, bringing in Gerrard is brought a bit of a uplift to the club as it is. And then I think you brought in some good players like Coutinho and things like that. So you've seen some good goals with him and he's been playing well. And the way you've been playing looks aesthetically better. So it's almost masked the fact that you've had quite a poor year in reality, haven't you? And I think actually George alluded to it as well, probably halfway through the season. He said that you've been playing well up until a point, and then you had a car crash 4 or 5 weeks, and no one was talking about you.
The funny thing about that, Liam, is because everything he's about to say, I get drip fed. Like this conversation, I'm like, how many times this season, Nathan, I've been like, bloody hell, you're playing well today, and you go, just wait, second half will be 2-0 down.
Yeah.
Let me just, because I answer that, but answer this, because I must have asked you this about 8 times this season. But now that you've got all the information in front of you, whether or not it was the right decision to get rid of Dean Smith, which I think everyone would agree it probably was. Looking at the table and where you are, if you would have just stuck with him, maybe you wouldn't have had the power to pull in Coutinho and Digne, but would you actually really be any worse off?
Probably, I think we would have been looking over our shoulder more at relegation, but we could still quite easily have finished 14th with Dean Smith. I think we would have had at no point this year really, after Gerrard got a few results, that I think we might go down. I think we were always just at an arm's length away from those bottom 5 or 6. Do I think that he could have gone on a run and won his 3 games at the end? I mean, we've just drawn with Burnley and Palace. Would he have won those 2 games and finished as 15th? Probably. 14th? Probably. In reference to Liam's point, yesterday was a perfect example. If you'd have looked at the Premier League table, I think the one team that would have surprised you where they finished would be us, because you'd have seen us go 2-0 up at the Etihad and look pretty comfortable and lose 3-2, and you think, oh, they're probably a top 10 team, and we're 14th. Like it's been that sort of year that if you don't sort of follow it week in, week out, especially because I've been to sort of more games this year than ever, you just sit, like the disappointing 2-0s where we're at 3 o'clock on a Saturday against the Palace that you just skip over and think we're still doing quite well. And we just start to slump low 11th, 12th, 13th, and you're looking over your shoulder then. But yeah, disappointing season. I'll probably give it a 3 or a 4, but the foundations are there for a good run next year. There's no reason we can't be a West Ham.
But can I counter that? You've said a 3 or a 4. Surely this season for you was much more exciting than last season. Like all those signings that you made in January, even that initial burst of Gerrard when he did come in and he did quite well initially. I think having those marquee signings must be very exciting for the future for you as a Villa fan, like getting back to the way you guys should be.
I'd agree with that. The Gerrard pull factor has been fun. It's been something we haven't been used to for a while, where you're getting linked to the Suarez is even I've seen recently we're linked with, and like we got Coutinho, and you're linked with players that you were never linked with before.
Yeah.
But then that just it heightens your expectation as well. If you are bringing in the Coutinhos and the players like that, like I said, you don't expect to be 3 places lower than last year when we had players like El Ghazi who can get a kick at Everton, Trezeguet, and they did probably not a better job, but they finished 11th in that team. Ross Barkley, who I saw popped up on the final day of the season, was a star player for us. So, albeit it is more exciting, those players did us a better job last year than this year. So,
yeah, I think there's also that shift, though, isn't there, from when you play a defensive brand of football and you make teams break you down to when you actually start attacking teams and they essentially. I just see the chat just pinging off 7-2 against Liverpool. Yes, I get that. But we were attacking you and they counter-attacked us 7 times and played very well. I'm not taking anything away from Villa. They played very well on the day. But what I'm saying is last year, when you sit back and you let teams play against you and you make it really hard to beat you, it's like what happens when you get to the point of being a bigger team makes that teams don't want to lose to you. Like, you know, they have to break you down now instead. Like, yeah, I don't know. I
was looking at that as well, and I saw a stat earlier, which I thought would be contrary to what it was. It was we actually ran the least in the Premier League this year out of every team. Villa were bottom of that, and then it was Chelsea was second bottom, and even I think Man City were 5th highest. And you think they would have all the ball and wouldn't have to run around. I think it was Norwich at the top. Brentford, the teams you would expect to be chasing the ball. Villa were bottom by a good distance as well. So albeit you think last year we'd break us down, this year we weren't exactly on the front foot. I think McGinn was probably half of that himself because he's the only one in the midfield that does the running. Ramsey's more a ball carrier, Luis sits. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I think what's done people quite dirty in this and what the table, I know the table never lies, but what's done people quite dirty in this table is that Newcastle have come out of nowhere and ended up 11th, which has really like muddied that table quite a lot because they were literally bottom at the middle of the year. So, you know, the surprise factor, everybody's lost a point if you're below 10th right now because Newcastle have somehow stormed all the way up and ruined a lot of people's seasons.
Can I just ask one final question to Nathan, just on Villa? It's a 2-part question, actually. Firstly, do you rate Tyrone Mings? And secondly, was that touch yesterday the worst touch you've ever seen in Premier League football history?
Do I rate Tyrone Mings? I don't think he's as bad as people will say he is.
Okay.
I think he could be. I think if we want to be in the top 6, 7, he needs to be upgraded for sure.
Yeah.
But if you compare his stats with Ezri Konsa, who gets it sort of quite easily, if you look at like duels and tackles, and Mings is a lot like clearer, and he's in a back 2. I could always compare him with like Cody and players like that, where in a back 3, sort of a back 7, very defensive.
Can you
with
share
the way we play? He's very open to just being exposed. It's just I think if he was in a back 3 in a defensive side, he wouldn't look that bad either. But
can you share the stat with them that you shared with me about Mings in England, which you think clouds his sort of perception in the public eye?
Never lost with England, or
I can't believe you forgot. Am I allowed to say it on your behalf?
Yeah.
Nathan made the point to me, and I actually thought he's absolutely right. Like, obviously, after the other day, oh, what a guy! I absolutely love him. He's
Leeds' his hero now.
Tyrone Mings has as much kept us in the league this year as Patrick Bamford has. A kid, of course. Or I might look at the numbers yourself now. Bamford just. But Nathan made the point to me is that Mings is in the England squad. So everyone thinks that he's in X amount of England's best centre-backs, along with Stonesy and Ben Maldini and all of them. But Nathan made the point, he's not necessarily there on merit. He's there because he's left-footed. And so people look at it and go, why is he in the England squad? Why is it when there's all these supposed players that are better than him? But it's actually, he's not necessarily there on merit. It's just because he's left-footed, which then I thought, actually, when he did get the England call-up, I was a bit like, come on. But if that's
the one position at the minute as well that is up for doubt, probably Maguire's form. So like a left centre back, you're looking at other left centre backs, and you've got Ben White, who predominantly plays right centre back, who I'd probably have there anyway. And then you're looking at left-footed centre backs that play to a decent level in the Premier League that are English, and Mings, he stands out as one of the only ones, albeit he's all right. He'd never really performed badly for England, never performed that well, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's in the squad again just for that, and a bit of height as well, a bit of added height.
Yeah,
I'm a bit of a, I don't know. I don't watch Villa as much as you. I probably watch England just as much as you, but I've always thought that he plays quite well for England, and I've never really seen the extent of the criticism on him. But then again, I'm going to take your word, Nathan, over on Mingsy.
Seriously, that touch though was terrible.
Yeah, it was bad. It's not his worst mistake. Well, he goes from doing that to saving Leeds the week before. He's like, that's what he is. Like, he goes from a 10 to a 2 real quick. Quick.
George, I've been excited about this because for the last, you've been a horrible person to speak to for about 7 weeks on football because, Leeds have been crap. But hey, you stayed in the Premier League. How was it?
It was horrible, really. Telling family members to F off when they're trying to give me percentile chances of Burnley winning. My brother was like, Burnley are now 30s. They've just gone down to 18% to win. And I was just like, honestly, get lost, Tom. I think, let me just come back on 2 things that I just want to say about Arsenal and that sort of Villa. When Liam talks about Arsenal being in the Europa League, he's absolutely right. But Arsenal can't win it. And you're both going to laugh because the media won't let them win it. The media will say Arsenal need to go for top 4, irrespective of that. So Liam's absolutely right. He'll think at the start of the season, when he sees the group they're drawn in, we can win this. Let's say they get a Portuguese team, Latvian team, Spanish team, win those first 3, like when you had Dundalk a few years ago, Liam, in that joke of a group. But then you go and lose to Wolves at the weekend, meltdown. You then go away and beat, I don't know, Apoel Nicosia 15-0. Doesn't matter because you've just lost to Brighton. And then everyone goes, right, Arteta needs to go. We don't care about this Mickey Mouse Cup. And that is a shame because West Ham never had that pressure. The only person giving them pressure was me.
True. Great point.
As for Stevie, and I think we all need to hold our hands up and say it, I really like him. Great character, speaks well, always looks smart. Media perception's changed because it's him. That's all it is. Nathan will be the first to say that. I'm not saying he's done a bad job. I'm not taking anything away from him. But Dean Smith, to be honest, unless you watch Championship football, was a no mark. Then took Villa up, club legend at Villa. But other than that,
I'm gonna tell you a fact of what's going to happen next year.
Go on.
It's the exact same thing that I said that would happen with Leeds this year. The Wool, and it's the same thing with Sheffield that happened 2 years ago. The Wool's going to come off with Steven Gerrard next year. First year, you get media grace if you're one of the boys. Leeds come up, one of the boys. Great to have him back. Great, Sheffield do amazingly well. Second year, start performing bad. The media starts. You can't be protected. Carragher, Neville, Keane, they're all going to come after you as soon as you start performing bad in your second year. There's no holding back. Yeah. Gerrard will be slammed at some point next year. Facts.
Perhaps. But yeah, with us, I mean, obviously I was absolutely overjoyed, and every fan's entitled to sort of get a bit excited when you do something like that on the last day and against all odds or whatever. But I'll come on to yesterday in a minute, but we were extremely lucky yesterday. And I think over the course of the season, we have had our fair share of bad luck, but we've made some absolutely shocking decisions. And we were very, very fortunate that there were 3 worse teams worse than us. Because on another year, I'm not so sure we get away with that. But I think in terms of what I think's gone wrong this year, before everyone goes about transfers and stuff, it's just these fixtures that I've jotted down and spoke about so many times where I think we've really lost it. Burnley start the season when we had everyone fit and we drew 1-1, should have won that. Mm-hmm. Newcastle, when they beat us 1-0, when we were all over them in January, you alluded to that earlier, Mays, can't finish, don't see it out, lose. Newcastle, we could have gone 10 points above them then, we didn't. They've skyrocketed. Newcastle again, away, start of the season, should have beat them. 1-1 draw, pathetic defensive performance. When Everton hadn't won a game since they beat Arsenal, I think they'd had like 12 games without a win. Out of nowhere, they beat us 3-0, and Donny van der Beek looks like Johan Cruyff. Brentford, 1-0 up, we go at home, got to win that, don't. We need Bamford to come off, score in the last minute, pull his hamstring and be out for the rest of the season. Got 1 point, should have won. Leicester played really well, got a goal. This is at home, not away. Got a goal. Barnes, 6 seconds later from kickoff scores. Now, if we would have got those points, we would have been 14 points better off, and we would have been miles off it, and we wouldn't have looked too dissimilar from last year. Truth is, we didn't. I mean, the cracks really began to show in Bielsa's system in terms of the high press, both in terms of the training and obviously the way we were just bending over backwards for several games. And then they've made that decision. They brought Marsh in, and I just don't think he's inspired anyone at all. People say credit where it's due. Nathan, I'll interlude you in a minute. People say credit where it's due, and I think the games that he won, we would have won anyway, with the exception of Wolves, in which if Bielsa was in charge, we would have been 5-0 down at half-time, not 2, and that we wouldn't have been able to take advantage for that red card. But like I said, it was Norwich, Watford and Burnley not being very good that have saved us this year. And we just have to thank the Lord that we had a player like Rafinha that no one else in that bottom 3 had. I mean, he single-handedly sort of kept us up this year with 11 goals. So what more can I say? Didn't enjoy any moment of this season apart from the equalising goal against Man United to make it 2-2 when we went on to lose 4-2, and about the last 20 seconds of the game yesterday.
I was in the pub with that one for you, I can confirm. Oh my God, he was shaking at the bar at 2-2. By the time he'd sat down, it was 2-4.
But the thing is, Liam, you're going, what? That's it. That is honestly it. I mean, I think we've only won 2 games this year by more than 1 goal. And one of them was Burnley and the other one was Watford. And we should be beating them.
My question is, looking to next year, it's like 2 or 3 parts. Do you think you'll keep Rafinha and Phillips, firstly? Because they're the 2 that everyone will want.
Mm-hmm.
B, do you think Marsh has enough of a pull? As we were discussing with Villa earlier, like the Gerrard factor. Is Marsh going to pull in any names, or is it going to be people for the system? Whatever that system is, I'm not sure. And 3, I know it's early to say, the teams that have gone down, Burnley, pretty poor squad. Norwich, pretty poor squad. Watford, the teams that are coming up, Bournemouth, money behind them. Fulham, I think all 3 of the squads, if Forest come up per se, are probably already better than the 3 that have gone down. Mm-hmm. So I think that would then put you as next likely to go down. Confident next year or not?
Ooh.
I think Rafinha goes, and rightly so. I mean, wasn't just him last year, but he was remarkable for us last season. He's been the only player this year where you've thought, if he has a good game today, we can get something.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. And you know what? He deserves to go. He deserves it. He's played a very important part in helping us get established as a Premier League club. And when people like Mays go, but he loves Leeds, what else can we offer him?
No chance.
What else can we offer him apart from a dogfight in a country or in a city in which it's absolutely freezing all the time and he'll hate it? Honestly, Liam, 30% of players are at Arsenal because it's in London. Sorry.
It's the red and white, mate.
All right.
It's the pride. Pride of the badge.
So I think Rafinha will go. And ultimately, we do need to sell someone because our FFP is like that. We need to sell someone, so I think it'll probably be him. Phillips is, I think he will sign a new deal, but I think it's then a question of who's interested and what he wants. Now, when we went down, as you know, Villa were heavily interested. Newcastle, I think I've seen things were interested as well. I'm not quite sure if he goes to those clubs unless it's a ludicrous amount of money he's offered. But I could see him going if a European team comes in for him, in terms of an English team in Europe is what I mean. So that's probably what I think on that one. Second question, Marsh, players. I think that he's going to have very little say on recruitment. Unfortunately, I think Victor Orta will still be there next year. He shouldn't be, in my view, at all. But I think Marsh will just have a varied say on this is the system I want to play, and these are the players we'll get in. But as you've said, that's part of the problem. We went from being a free-flowing, supposedly, free-flowing, everyone running around high intensity, non-stop, to let's just try and be really negative and eke 1-0s, which is fine if you've got the players for it. But we don't, which is why I think we struggled so much. And what was the final question? Sorry. Oh, yeah, I've remembered squads. For me, next year, it's Bournemouth, Forest or Huddersfield, and then either Leeds or Brentford. So I think we've got a big job on in the summer. We need to get the right players to come in, not necessarily just throw a load of money. We need to get the right players to come in. And I'm just hoping that he can show more than what he's shown in his 12 or 13 games that he's had, because I just haven't been impressed at all with some of the substitutions he's made. Norwich 1-0, 55, 60 minutes, just tries to see it out. Terrible, absolutely terrible. Other games, he's not going with a recognised striker and he's playing a right winger, which ultimately I think cost Dan James getting sent off because he was so frustrated that he was out of position. So for me, it's going to be a slog again next year. I think I've always been quite clear and transparent that for me, first 2 to 3 years, I just want to stay up. That's it. Third and fourth year, if we're still in the dogfight, I'll be a bit like, well, this isn't really good enough. But again, first few years, I just want to stay up because we were out of it for so long.
It's interesting. Nathan, you raised a really good point there about those bottom 3 teams. I think next year might be the strongest Premier League, like all top to bottom we've ever had, because I mean, when Everton are coming like 16th, and Everton, though they played absolutely donkey this year, they have a pretty decent squad. They have a lot of money behind them. I mean, you've got to say that Brentford are in trouble if they lose Eriksen, and maybe even Palace might be dragged in if Gallagher goes. But I don't know. I feel like every other team there is. Southampton have been really poor. They need to change something, I would say, as well. Southampton probably be my favourites to go down next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually think if Leeds don't, I don't really see what Marsh offers. I haven't watched every game, but the games I have watched, I don't really see anything really to get excited about. If you lose Rafinha and you lose Calvin Phillips and you keep Dan James, I think you guys, for me, with Southampton, I agree. I think Southampton are going to be the next Burnley. I think they're running out of time. I think they've got a handful of good players and they never seem to really buy better, and they've never gone anywhere. Like you see, even 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago, maybe Burnley even got Europa League. Southampton have never been that. They've just always been the bottom feeders in the Prem since they've come up. I think they're walking on thin ice as well, and I think they're going to probably be dragged into it.
I think the thing about what Marsh has said about his system is that he ideally wanted it at the end of the season. He thought Bielsa would have kept us up and then gone off, blah, 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 which ideally I think every Leeds fan probably would have wanted. But he's just sort of come out and said, we can't play the way I want us to play with the situation we're in, which is absolute rubbish, because he's had 2 or 3 months now to try and get us playing something recognisable. And at times it hasn't even been give it to Rafinha and see if he can do something, which would be an understandable approach. It's just sort of been 7-8 players just sort of loitering in our third, and then a few isolated players up there and just hoof it long. And then if we win the second ball, let's see what we can do, which just is weak as water when you're looking at a 38-game season. I think our most important thing for next year with his stuff is just getting results against the teams around us and not drawing. We need to just start winning early. So, yeah, and as for Southampton, maybe. But I must say, I'm very impressed, Liam, that you've managed to work out if we lose our 2 best players and don't replace them, we'll go down, given the fact we've just stayed up on the final day.
I'm a stickler for the finer details.
How do you do it, mate?
I agree with Southampton, but I actually might go one further because, my agenda against this team's clear. I could see Wolves slipping down next year. If I said to you that Wolves finished 10th in the Premier League, would you have seen that they finished 10th? Because I remember about 2 months ago, Maze, you tipped them for 4th. And then they went 9 games without a win. And
brought that up.
Look at Wolves' squad. It just nothing excites me about that. I think Everton, Palace, Newcastle, Villa have all got way more potential to swap places with them next year.
Yeah,
And
Wolves are
be
getting
stuck.
older as well.
Well, I look at Wolves' team and I don't take any of their 11 and put it in Villa's 11, and they're a better team than us.
Not even Neto. You don't
Maybe
take
Neves.
Neto.
No, I wouldn't take Jimenez. No,
What about Neto?
no.
Neves.
Over Watkins. You wouldn't take Jimenez over Watkins.
You'd be taking Neves.
Jimenez scored 2 goals until February. I wouldn't take
but he was
Jimenez.
injured, wasn't he? Like he was injured the first half of the season.
I wouldn't take Jimenez over Watkins. I'd
Jimenez
probably take
isn't the
Neves. I'd probably take Neves.
Yeah, you
But
would. Yeah.
I'd have to look at how good Kamara is with this new.
Ooh.
Before signing him, I would have taken him, but now I'm just gonna.
Would you take Jose
Connor Cody in that back line?
No, Cody shouldn't be anywhere near
Cody
that
in the
Villa
back
team.
two, maze. Oh my god.
No.
I don't want a heart attack.
Again,
I don't want a heart attack.
drinking on a school
I
night.
love
Mate,
Connor
stop.
Cody.
It's Saar's decent, but again, over Martin, I don't think there's any clear other than probably Neves. So I think they could easily be sucked down into it. Players like Dendoncker and stuff, Father Time will catch up with them.
True.
Oh, I'm looking forward to the prediction podcast next week. Everybody listen in for that one for sure.
Wait, hold on, Mace. Hold on. 3 out of 10 for us this year.
I was just about to say, George, finish off with your prediction. 3 out of 10. Yeah, okay. That's not really. You're pretty lenient on that. All right, I'll give my Liverpool rundown. So, look, I'm going to start off with the recap of what happened on yesterday, so I can set the scene. Nathan is begrudgingly on this podcast, and I can barely look at him after his team's performance yesterday. Absolutely shocking. 2-0 up, 5 minutes. They are 3-2 down. Absolutely ripping my heart out because I was not expecting City to drop any points yesterday. So then they got my hopes up, Aston Villa, and then they sloshed them.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, it's true. I know what it's like to be a Villa fan now. And look, Liverpool's season altogether, I couldn't be happier with it. Like if you told me at the beginning of the season, you'll be fighting on every front until the last day of the season, that you take that, don't you? So you've got to give it a 9 out of 10 in terms of that. Yes, obviously there's the horrific losing by a point again to Manchester City. But in my team, Manchester City, in my opinion, I think Manchester City are a better team. Like I genuinely think that City are a great team.
Is the Prem, Bob? Sorry, is the Prem the one that got away?
Yeah, for sure.
Would you trade in the FA Cup, Carabao Cup for the Prem?
Oh yeah.
Would you trade in the FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and Champions League for the Prem?
No. And this actually does annoy me. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here. When Pep Guardiola, Pep, you can come on, you can insult me on my podcast, whatever. But when he comes on and says, "Oh, well, it's a bigger, it's harder to win the Premier League," that's absolute nonsense. First off, it's not harder to win the Premier League than 3 trophies because you have to go undefeated in 3 trophies to get the 3 trophies. So you literally have to win every game. And there's just as many games in those 3 competitions as there are, and we're talking about group stages as well. There might be 10 games different, but you're playing higher quality teams in the Champions League. You're playing higher quality teams towards the end of the season. I'm a massive advocate of there is 3 trophies. There's a lot more pressure on each game when you're playing in those games. I get the first part, first part of the Carabao Cup, nobody really cares about. First part of the FA Cup, nobody really cares about. I'm about to be slaughtered by people here, but I get really annoyed that there's no way that three trophies is worse than a Premier League trophy. And anybody here is lying if they'd rather take the Premier League over 3 trophies in a year. George.
If I was the second biggest club in England and one of the biggest in the world, and I've essentially got a monopoly on Champions Leagues when it comes to English clubs, and the Premier League is the one that we've only won once in 3 decades, I would probably have rather had that one than the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, in which you've said in previous years when you've gone out early, who cares? I just want the big 2. Now, I respect what you're saying. I get that. You won the Premier League a few years ago. You haven't won the League Cup since 2011. Haven't won the FA Cup since 2005 with the Gerrard West Ham. So I do take all that. But can you understand why people who aren't Liverpool fans look at it and go, well, you haven't beaten one of the top 4 this year. Haven't beaten City, you haven't beaten Chelsea, you haven't beaten Spurs. You haven't lost any. You've drawn all those games. Now, don't be fooled. Yes, AC Milan have just won Serie A for the first time in a while. Fantastic. They were abysmal in that campaign. They finished last. Porto would finish 14th in the Premier League, and that's me saying that. And Atletico Madrid are not the Atletico Madrid of 13-14. They were miles off it and had to use dirty, dark magic tactics to get through against Porto, which I thoroughly respected.
That was City's biggest game of their lives, though.
Hold on, Maze. Inter Milan, not the team they were when they had Adriano. Benfica would finish 15th in the Premier League. Villarreal had their final against Bayern Munich and are nowhere near up to it. And now you're going to say, yeah, but we're playing Real Madrid. Again, not Real Madrid of 5 or 6 years ago. Not your fault. You can only play who's in front of you, but do you not recognise that other fans will look at that and go, well, you kind of should be. You should be getting to the final. You should be winning it. But in those crunch games against Spurs, against City, and against Chelsea, in which nowadays, 10 years ago, no, but nowadays you actually need to win a handful of them. You haven't, and City have.
Well, we have won them because we beat Chelsea twice in the final.
No, mate, but in the league.
Yeah, but they haven't beaten us either. So
I know that, but everyone knew Chelsea were finished ages ago. You were saying Tuchel was going to lose his job. He might do.
I didn't. I love Tuchel.
You said if they finish third, he'll get fired. And he might get fired. Yeah, he might do. And some would say he should. But I'm saying
they can fire him now.
I'm saying in terms of in the Premier League.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Spurs as well, mate. Come on.
In fact, to be fair, Bob, if you beat one of those teams, you're winning the Prem.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying that we played perfect the whole season. We've got 91 points. You know, it's nearly beaten. I think I saw something. It was like only 6 teams in the Premier League era have ever beaten that. Like would ever actually have won over us. You know, Ferguson has won 13 trophies and he never got 91 points.
I think I promise this is my last thing I'll say to you, Maze. I get it. This is an exceptional City team, but that's the bar now.
100%.
That's the bar. If we would have got relegated yesterday, and I would have come on here and said, yeah, but for the past 5 years with the points we accrued, we would have stayed up. It doesn't mean anything. That's the bar now. If Klopp wants to beat Pep, he actually has to go out and win the games. He can't just keep bullying journalists.
Yeah, sorry, Nick.
I don't agree that City are a better team than Liverpool anymore. It was a very easy excuse when Liverpool had 13 good players. But now you're looking at the bench and you can bring on Firmino, Jota. You've got the squad to compete. And I would almost say, I think Liverpool are more accustomed to winning a treble and a quad. I think Liverpool just look imperious in every game they play. I mean, as George said, very easy run. Villarreal, Benfica, FA Cup, I think you had Cardiff, Norwich, Forest. You got a half decent game in the semi-final finally against City. I think Liverpool are a better side. So, yeah, I think the Premier League was the one that got away. I think you were well on to winning a quad. I think a treble is good if you win the. I think the quad was there. I don't think anyone will get as close to winning the quad in a long time.
Can I ask this right though? You're talking about it because you know Liverpool. You're aiming this at Liverpool, right? Everybody here. But let's say Arsenal, or
don't bring us into this, please.
Or we say Tottenham next year, right? What's more impressive if Tottenham win next year? What would be remembered more? They win the Premier. I almost say it's the Premier League. Yeah, it is the Premier League.
Arsenal as well. You shouldn't have started this comment.
I think Arsenal. I think if Arsenal won the treble, I think there'd be a much bigger year. You've already won the Premier League. You've never won the Champions League.
Mate, we haven't won the Premier League in almost 20 years.
But you've never won the Champions League.
No, we have never won the Champions League. So I do agree the Champions League would be better.
If you won the treble next year, you won the Champions League. Say Tottenham get done. Every single one of their players gets done for doping. They lose 3 points. You get top 4. Crazy, unheard of,
unbelievable.
But then next season you get to be in the Champions League, you go on a massive run, you beat Real Madrid, you beat Juventus, you beat City in the semi-finals, and then you come up against the best team in the world, in George and Nathan's opinion, you beat Liverpool. Unbelievable. Wow, what a great game. Okay. Then you win the FA Cup and you win the Carabao Cup, Or I could tell you, yeah, you won the Premier League with 70 points.
Yeah, I'd rather win the Prem.
You're lying.
I genuinely would. And let me explain this why.
Liam, go on.
Mental.
That would always be, and George, Nathan just said it a minute ago, and I said it to you as well. The Prem is the creme de la creme. That is always the one that got away. If you offered me right now just the Prem or the other three, I'll take the Prem. If you offer me Champions League and the Prem, I'll take them both over having Prem, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, even Champions League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup.
What about this? So next year you win the Premier League, and then 2 years later you get offered the treble. What do you take?
We still haven't won the Champions League?
No.
Then I'd probably say that. But that's only because we haven't won it in 20 years. You've only won it once in how long?
What do you mean? The Prem
for Liverpool.
You know,
but that's
won it 3 years ago.
You've also won a Champions League how many times in the last decade?
But Maze, that's the argument I'm making. In your lifetime, you've seen Liverpool win the Champions League twice, and you've seen him win the Premier League once, which I know it sounds ridiculous because it's only one more time and it's square. But in terms of your how do I sort of say this? It's always between you and Man United at this point in time. That's what it always is. And they always turn around to you and go, we've won the same number of titles now. I think you both won 19.
No, we've won 2 more.
All right, you've won 2 more than them, fine.
Oh, are you talking about
Premier Leagues?
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right, but that's what I mean. You've got a monopoly on Champions League. It's going to take, in my estimate, let's say City go on to win it next year. It's going to take at least almost 2 decades with fixtures, injuries, runs, everything to go your way for them to catch up to that. Whereas the Premier League, if let's say you don't win it this year, you don't win it next year, guess what? The media will be saying Klopp failed because the Liverpool team he's assembled is absolutely unbelievable. And we all knew what the bar was and he just couldn't catch him. I get what you're saying. You've won 3 trophies. That is amazing. I would literally do unspeakable things to have just one of those. I would. I'm sorry. I would. Liam May's trophies you've seen, all I've seen is a championship. That's all I've seen. But for Liverpool, second biggest club in England, one of the biggest in the world, have already got a monopoly on the Champions League. Like you're saying to Liam, he'd rather have the Prem because he's seen it over the hill, but he's never quite got there. Whereas you've had the Champions League more than most will ever get in a lifetime.
I feel like the Champions League for you guys is what the FA Cup is to Arsenal. I would trade in FA Cup for any other cup right now because we've won it 5 times in like the last.
I'm gonna tell you, Liam, the Champions League never gets old.
No, I know.
I'm gonna tell you that, my friend.
I had my Tuesday nights booked up for next year. Everything I had it all sorted out. It's all been taken away.
Nathan, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I think the League Cup. I know it's a treble, but the League Cup's a trophy that City won, 4 or 5 years in a row, and now Liverpool have won. It's a tournament where it's the smaller clubs can get to Wembley and the bigger clubs will win it in the end because their squad's way better. It will just be Liverpool and Man City's probably for the next 4 or 5 years because they're the best teams. So even though it's a trophy, it's a bit of a redundant trophy for me. I wouldn't get that excited winning a League Cup and I support Villa. I'd just be like,
I don't know. I get what you're saying there, but at the same time, we can't just start taking trophies away from teams after calling it, calling it like a big trophy. And then because Liverpool won it at the end of the season, it's not a big trophy and you wouldn't get excited about it.
Maze, can I quickly ask a question to segue on?
Yes.
In a few moments, you're going to give like score out of 10 or a grade or whatever. What happens if you don't beat Hala Madrid? What happens if you don't beat Hala Madrid?
Do you know what?
And you don't get, and you've just got the Milk Cup and the Prince William, Prince Edward Football Association Cup or whatever its proper name is. What happens then?
Well,
be honest and be critical.
Well, do you know what? Look, I just want to say, like, I agree with Nathan's point because first off, I don't get excited watching the League Cup. Right. But I'm sick of Manchester City fans and Man United fans always saying, oh, we won the League Cup and it's a big trophy after they win it. And then all of a sudden, like, it's taken away from me. But when I watched us play Wolves this weekend, I thought I haven't seen us this tired in a long time. we were fighting for the Premier League trophy and that we couldn't score against Wolves, who were on the beach, didn't care, even though Connor Cody was throwing himself around, fighting like a man possessed. They were time wasting from minute 2. Unbelievable. I've never seen such a dogged performance from such a annoying team. But when I watched it, I thought we have everything to play for, and we can't break them down. And we've conceded in the last 3 games first, like every time. I think Villa, who was the middle team? Southampton? Was it Southampton?
Yeah.
Villa, Southampton, and Wolves have all scored against us in the first 10 minutes of the game. And we've just been so poor in the last 5 games. Horrible. I have a horrible feeling that Real Madrid are going to come out and they're going to do their Champions League. And I'm going to tell you, it will feel like a failure of a season, even though we've already won 2 cups, because I get what Nathan's saying. They're not as big a trophies as the Premier League, or what would I have taken at the start of the season? FA Cup and League Cup, or the Premier League, or even the Champions League. I would have taken the Champions League over both of those combined. So yes, confirmed failure of a season if we lose. George.
Give you the chance to speak about how great Diaz was when he came in. By the way, he came from Porto. It's a club in Portugal, and Portugal is another country for all armchair fans listening. The Porto 2-time Champions League winners, more than Arsenal. And I want everyone to know it. Is it bedtime for Mane now that Diaz has come in? Out of all, because I remember one Monday morning after Diaz scored, I think it was against Norwich, went, is it bedtime for Mane? And Mays went, yeah, I think it might be bedtime for Mane. So what happens there? Because as good as you are winning stuff, can you keep hold of all of them, or do you actually need to just trim some of the fat?
It's so hard.
And actually, nicely, do you also now recognise Mane as your best player because he scores in big games, unlike Salah?
Salah's been absolutely poor since the turn of the season. He's been shocking.
Finally.
Yeah, finally.
It would be such a loss to lose either of them, because Salah goes in. Salah, don't get me wrong, Salah half a season normally is the best player in the Premier League. Then the other half, he's just just when I say average, he's not as good. He's such a confidence player. Mane, apart from the first half of this season, is always consistent. He's just consistent. It's tough. It's tough. If we lose Mane, it is a big loss. I think that Diaz is given as a shining light where the contract situation's been put back in our hand a bit more. And I think the contracts really affected Salah over the second half of the season. I think he's not played as well since all the drama's come out about it. I don't know where they go, because I don't see Mane as the only place that he could go is Munich, I heard. And I don't see him as a Munich player. But then again, they're losing Lewandowski. So maybe Real Madrid could come in for Salah now that this Mbappe situation's over. And that Mbappe situation is something we probably should speak about at some point on this podcast, because that's a joke, that contract. Unbelievable. I could see Real Madrid coming in for Salah now with big money, because they need a marquee sign. They're embarrassed right now. Real Madrid are embarrassed because of this whole Mbappe situation. They couldn't get Haaland. They couldn't get Mbappe. All right, who's the next best player in the world that's a striker or a forward? Probably Salah. So they probably will end up going for Salah, and I could see him leaving. And I think if Salah goes, I prefer right now, I think Mane and Diaz have a very good relationship, but I would prefer to keep Salah.
Jota and Firmino, discuss.
Well, Jota stays.
Yeah.
Jota definitely stays. I think Jota will be a very good player next season in terms of he'll play every single League Cup game, and he'll play every team apart from maybe the top 5 teams in the Premier League. Like, he will play every other game in the Premier League. And he'll probably end up with 15 goals next season, I would say, Jota, if he stays healthy. Yeah. But Bobby, I think Bobby's a bit of a Liverpool fan, so he might just stay out of where else can he go that he can win trophies, unless he really just wants to play football. Give Liverpool a 9 out of 10. And do you know what? It was a good season. Just very annoying for last day. Golden Boot was shared with Mohamed Salah and Son, who Son was the unsung hero of the Premier League, I would say. I thought he was very, very good for the whole season. While Salah was just good for the first half. Imagine if Salah was good for both halves of the season, he would have scored 40 goals. But yeah, Son was great. Both ended up on 22 goals. Golden Glove was shared with Edison and Allison. Do you guys have anything you want to say about those two?
Yeah, I'm just going to get in there first. None of Son's were penalties.
Good point.
That's all.
That was a great point. Yeah, he probably actually that should be the tiebreaker at the end of the season. But then again, some penalties are probably a bit higher pressure.
It's funny because they're not when we're discussing Ronaldo's goal tallies. That's funny.
Hey, I'm a Ronaldo fan. I don't know why you attack me, Georgie. Nathan, Liam, anything you wanted to say on those two?
Yeah, I love Son. I've always loved Son. He's such a great player. I think he's probably the one player that I'd take in my team over everyone. Mm-hmm. Probably on a par with KDB, to be honest. Like every time he plays, it's just unplayable. Right foot, left foot, brilliant positioning. Makes our best players look rubbish. Like Cash and Digne just made them look rubbish. I wanted Son to get another one at Norwich. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not Salah's biggest fan, as you say. He drips in and out of the season, penalties. But yeah, it's nice to see Son get some recognition. I'm sure Liam was buzzing as well.
No, yeah, I was really backing Salah to go and nick another goal off his thigh, off his knee, or off his shoulder. I couldn't care less because I can't stand Son. I think he's one of the worst human beings on the planet.
Oh.
I'm not. Yeah, I obviously a good footballer, and it's not even just about his goals. I just think everyone pictures him as this. He's such a nice guy. He's broken one guy's leg. He dives every week. Every week. He's a diver. I just don't like him. Really don't like him. He's up there with Dan James for me. I really don't like Dan James.
Don't know about you fellas. That sounds a lot like top of his game Dennis Bergkamp for me. Going in, dragging his studs down people's shins, flopping all.
Diving every week definitely sounds like Mr. Bukayo Saka.
Yeah, it does. That does sound like Mr. Bukayo Saka.
Made of glass.
I don't know what you mean.
Look, but Liam, there is a positive for you this season. And that's that half the referees seem to be retiring this season.
Yeah, good riddance, mate. I've applied. I'm still waiting for a callback.
Look, it's been a wild season. I'm going to run through quickly the scores that happened over the weekend when I can find them. So it was Crystal Palace 1, Man United 0. Actually, before I run through the scores, Erik ten Hag, quick prediction. Do you guys think he was dead happy yesterday from this result? Or do you think he was like, I want to leave, like I can't, I need to get out of here? George?
I think he will be, well, I've said before, I think he'll be fired by February time, I think.
Christmas?
No, I'll be fair to him. I think
Conte.
probably. No, the thing is, Conte was never going to be fired. He'd just walk. Whereas I think, thing is, he knew what he was he was walking into. So I don't know if he'd be surprised. What I would like to say though is Mays and Liam's West Ham. If they would have done the business against Brighton yesterday, they would have got Europa League, but they didn't. But of course, that's not their fault. It's all my fault, obviously. So yeah.
Nathan?
I don't see them improving that much. I think he likes his way and he likes his players. And like I've seen like interviews, he's very methodical in how he works and he wants like 100. And looking at United's squad still, there are a lot of players that I don't think will give him everything he wants. I think he needs 2 or 3 windows. I think next season's a bit of a free hit. I think they got the Conference League in there as well, so a bit of European football. We'll see how they go, but I don't expect them to pull up any trees next year.
And Liam?
United still, Ten Hag?
Yeah.
I'm not worried at all. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they've got too much dead wood there. They can't just clear that out in 1-2 windows. I think next year is going to be a write-off for him as well. And they might have some good games because they've got Ronaldo in there still, if he's still there. But I don't really know much about Ten Hag, and I'm not really bothered by him, to be honest. They've brought in this Ragnick who was talked up just on the same level, and he's just been diabolically poor. So, yeah, they've got to clear out everybody and get in an entire new squad if they're going to have any chance, and they're just not going to be able to do that.
Fair enough. Arsenal 5-1 versus Everton. I love how you pull out a performance like that on the last day of a season.
Pressure's off, Bob. We're on the beach.
Chelsea 2, Watford 1, Leicester 4, Southampton 1, Brentford 1, Leeds 2, Burnley 1, Newcastle 2. Newcastle do as good next season or not as good? Questions.
Better, yeah.
Better. Nathan?
Yeah. I think they'll finish around the same position, but not go on a crazy win streak. I think they'll just be 9th, 10th, but more consistent.
Yeah, I think so. George, you still there?
I agree with Nathan. Yeah, more or less the same. I think they'll bring in a few players, clear away a Deadwood, but I think anywhere between 9th and 14th.
Fair. City 3, Villa 2, Norwich 0, Tottenham 5. Oh, Norwich have been so poor this season. Do they come back up next season, boys?
I hope not. Fold the club.
Fold the club.
Don't see it.
Oh, such a poor performance yesterday. Gutless. So gutless. Like a shambles of a football club.
Oh, no. Brighton 3, West Ham 1, and Liverpool 3, Wolves 1. That is the final results of the season. And then, so next week we'll do our roundup. We'll do, I think over the next few weeks, we're going to do Champions League podcast. We'll do a, what's happening next season, what each team needs to get rid of, predictions. It's going to be a fun off season. Lots of events are going to happen. Thank you, boys, for joining. It's been fun, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.